Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're venturing into some, well, maybe slightly uncharted territory. This was your suggestion, actually.
It was, yeah.
We're diving deep into Alan Roger Currie's, say it again, Mastering the Fine Art of Verbal Seduction and Oral Sex.
Quite a title.
Isn't it?
Eh.
And it's definitely a book that offers, well, a different perspective on how we communicate, especially around attraction, intimacy, that kind of thing. So our goal in this deep dive is really to get under the skin of Currie's core ideas. We want to explore how he categorizes things and ultimately see what insights we can pull out for you, the learner, no matter where you're at with relationships or goals.
Exactly. And we'll look at his thoughts on overcoming what he calls social programming, his spectrum of women's sexual attitudes.
Which is quite something.
It is, and the role of verbal communication. Plus, he includes these, like, real-life stories, or at least presented as real life.
Right. So the source itself is a self-published book from 2011.
Yeah, and it's got, acknowledgments to various figures, some you might expect, some maybe not. Dating coaches, relationship people, even some from adult entertainment.
Interesting mix.
It is. And Currie lays out his approach. It's very question and answer. He tackles the Madonna whore complex pretty early on.
Okay.
Then gets into the mindset for verbal seduction, his rules, sexual chemistry, and then these verbal seduction stories, which he says are based on his experiences.
And it's probably important to mention, he says up front, he's not a licensed psychologist or therapist, right?
Yeah, absolutely. He's very clear this is based on his own experiences and client consultations, not clinical psychology.
Gotcha. So for you, the learner listening in,
Yeah.
you're probably interested in understanding, the dynamics of attraction, how communication works there.
Or maybe just looking for different perspectives, right? A deeper dive into human behavior in this, let's face it, pretty complex area.
Totally. And Currie's style is, well, it's direct, sometimes maybe controversial.
Definitely unconventional at times.
So it might spark some aha moments, or at least challenge how we normally think about these things. We'll navigate it together, pull out the key takeaways, and try to connect them back to, broader ideas about understanding people.
Sounds good. So the key questions we really want to dig into are, what does Currie see as the biggest roadblocks to sexual connection?
Okay.
How does he actually categorize women based on how receptive he thinks they are to sexual advances?
That scale you meant.
Exactly. What role does he think words actually play in seduction? What are his specific rules for that? How does he define sexual chemistry and break it down?
Right.
And finally, what can we actually learn from his stories? Keeping in mind, like you said, they're his examples of his theories in action.
Okay, let's dive in then. The number one obstacle, according to Currie, what is it?
Well, he argues it's not really about lack of attraction or opportunity necessarily. It's the weight of social programming.
Social programming, okay.
Yeah, he believes this is what holds men back from expressing desire openly and women from reciprocating or even acknowledging their own desires sometimes.
He uses that analogy, doesn't he? The angel and devil on the shoulder.
He does. The angel is like all the societal rules, the shoulds and shouldn'ts, and the devil represents the more raw, unfiltered desires, a constant battle in his view.
It's a pretty strong image.
And he specifically points to what he sees as the influence of Judeo-Christian values, particularly in America, promoting conservative, sort of puritanical views on sex.
With long-term monogamy and marriage is the ideal, yeah.
Exactly. And he highlights what he sees as hypocrisy there. Like, people might publicly condemn casual sex or, kinkier stuff, but privately they might desire it or even do it, that disconnect.
Right, the public face versus private reality.
Yeah.
Does he give examples of these conflicting messages?
Yeah, he talks about how society sends these messages that clash with natural desires, like women being conditioned not to seem easy.
Okay, so that creates an internal conflict, maybe.
That's exactly his point. It puts women in a bind between their genuine feelings and societal expectations.
Which leads us nicely into his famous 1 to 5 scale, the inhibited versus uninhibited scale for women.
Right. So let's break it down. At one end, you have the 5s.
Okay, the 5s.
According to Currie, these are women who basically frown upon premarital sex. They're not particularly interested in sexual enjoyment just for pleasure's sake.
Got it. Very traditional view. Then the 4s.
The 4s enjoy sex, but typically only within a long-term monogamous relationship, like a committed partnership or marriage. That's their comfort zone.
Makes sense. And the 3s?
3s are where it starts getting a bit more open. They might engage in some casual sex, but they're selective. He says they rarely do one-night stands. They're more discerning.
Okay, selective casual. Now, the twos. This sounds like where it gets complicated.
Very. He calls them sexually duplicitous, almost like sexual chameleons.
Chameleons. How so?
He suggests they can be really adventurous, even promiscuous with certain people, but put on a much more conservative front, like a 3, 4, or even 5 with others.
Wow. So projecting one image but being another way behind closed doors.
Pretty much. And he believes they actually value men who can see through that facade. And crucially, men who are good in bed. He gives this example of, like, seemingly prim women participating in orgies.
Okay, that's quite a claim. And finally, the ones.
The ones are at the other extreme from the 5s. He describes them as erotically uninhibited, possibly promiscuous, and basically not caring what others think about their sex lives.
So quite a spectrum there. What's the practical point for the listener, according to Currie? Who is this book for?
Good question. He's pretty explicit. He says his advice is mainly aimed at helping men navigate interactions with the 2s and 3s.
Okay.
And also the 4s, if the goal is a long-term relationship. He basically says, look, if someone's genuinely a 5 by his definition, this stuff won't work.
Right.
And the ones, they're usually straightforward anyway. You don't need complex seduction techniques.
But the key thing with the 2s is
that they don't want you to know they're a 2. And they'll often present as a higher number, a 3 or 4. That's the challenge he sets up.
interesting. It's obviously his framework based on his observations, not like scientific category.
Oh, absolutely. It's anecdotal and based on his personal model of the world. But it does make you think about how people present themselves, doesn't it? And potential mismatches between public persona and private desires.
Definitely food for thought. Okay, let's shift gears to his verbal seduction mindset and the rules he lays out. What's the core idea there?
The absolute core is being upfront, direct about your sexual intentions. He calls it Mode 1 behavior.
Mode 1, okay.
Yeah.
Even though, as he admits, many women say they prefer something else.
Exactly. He points out what he sees as a contradiction there. Women say they hate liars, but often seem to prefer men not be totally honest about wanting casual sex.
So he's calling out that potential inconsistency.
Yeah, and he's really critical of manipulation. Using head games, pretending you want a relationship just to get sex. He sees that as just wrong. And ultimately, not effective long-term, maybe.
So honesty, even if it's potentially uncomfortable honesty.
That's the foundation. And his first rule flows right from that. Verbal seduction rule, #1.
Which is
basically, don't use it if you don't need it.
Okay, pragmatic.
Yeah. If the attraction and horniness are already super high between both people, just go with it. Don't overcomplicate things with techniques.
Makes sense.
What else? He also advises against, like, relentless persistence if someone's clearly rejected you. Focus on the 1s, 2s, and 3s on his scale. Don't waste time on a definite no.
Right. Distinguish rejection from maybe initial resistance.
Exactly. And here's another interesting one. He thinks trying too hard to make women constantly comfortable can actually backfire.
How so?
He suggests that sometimes a little bit of intriguing discomfort, generated by confidence and self-assuredness, not creakiness, can be more attractive than just being nice or solicitous.
So confidence over just comfort. And he says flattery alone doesn't really work for arousal.
Yeah, he's pretty dismissive of flattery as a primary tool for arousal. It might be pleasant, but it doesn't ignite desire, in his view.
Okay. Which brings us to rule #7. This sounds important.
It feels like a cornerstone, yeah. Thoughts in your mind don't arouse a woman as much as thoughts in her mind.
Ooh, okay. Unpack that.
He uses this analogy. Your voice is the pilot light, your words are the gas, but her imagination is the furnace.
So it's about sparking her imagination, getting her to think sexy thoughts.
Precisely. It's why he champions talking dirty, as he puts it, using language to get her mind going. That's where he believes the real power lies.
He also talks about the difference between genuinely disliking something versus being conditioned to dislike it, like the food example.
Right. He says you might think you hate, I don't know, broccoli, but maybe it's just because you were told it was gross as a kid. He draws a parallel to sex. Maybe some turnoffs are learned, not innate.
Interesting psychological point. And he distinguishes between the conscious and subconscious mind, too.
Yeah, the conscious mind is the gatekeeper, right? Social programming, morals, rules. The subconscious is more autopilot, raw desire, pleasure-seeking, pain avoidance.
And his argument is that many women are kind of caught between these two, sexually conflicted.
That's the term he uses, pulled between what society expects and what they secretly desire.
And this is where his experience with phone sex comes in. He talks about that quite a bit.
He does. He claims a very high success rate, saying, A huge percentage of women he had these sexually explicit phone calls with got aroused, sometimes even to orgasm.
Wow, he found it really revealing.
Apparently so. Sometimes, he says, even more revealing about a woman's sensuality than actually meeting in person.
But what kind of insights did he claim to get from those calls?
A whole bunch. Things like many women feel pressured to act prudish but secretly want kinkier things.
Okay.
Many think about threesomes. Women often need more time to get aroused, his crock-pot versus microwave analogy.
I like that one.
They often feel they put more effort into pleasing men sexually. And, maybe surprisingly, many are open to casual sex if the guy is just honest about it from the start.
So a lot came out of those conversations, supposedly.
According to him, yeah. And it reinforced his idea about directness. He even advises guys not to worry too much about being seen as crass or coming on too strong.
Like that.
Because you just can't please everyone. He tells this story about one interviewer hating his approach, while female listeners wrote in saying they loved the directness. Different strokes.
You have to risk turning some off to really turn others on, maybe?
That seems to be his philosophy. He argues that this direct, explicit talk is also a quick way to figure out where a woman stands. Is she a reciprocator, rejecter, pretender, time waster? And get a sense of her 1 to 5 number.
And he found women interested in this.
Yeah.
Where? Not just bars.
No, he mentions meeting women in really everyday places. Grocery stores, gyms, bookstores. Back when people went to bookstores more, I guess.
Right. And he even mentions verbal exhibitionism, talking about other women.
Yeah, talking about seducing other women as a turn-on for the woman he's currently talking to. Pretty provocative stuff.
Definitely pushing boundaries.
Yeah.
And his final point in this section, about humor.
Right. He advises against trying to be funny and seductive at the same time. He thinks confidence is the aphrodisiac, not jokes. Focus on being self-assured.
Okay, so that's the mindset and rules part. It really hammers home his belief in direct, confident, explicit communication.
It absolutely does. It's a very specific and forceful approach he's advocating.
Now let's talk about sexual chemistry. How does Currie see that?
He thinks it's absolutely crucial, especially for long-term monogamous relationships. But he also notes it can be unpredictable. Sometimes you can guess, sometimes not, and it's tied into that social programming idea again.
Okay. How does he categorize it? Is it just good or bad?
He has 3 main categories: good, bad, and unpredictable.
All right.
And bad chemistry gets split further. There's non-existent, basically you're in the friend zone, platonic, like a play-brother dynamic, he says.
Okay, no spark.
Right. And then there's abusive detrimental chemistry, where maybe there is a spark, but it's with someone who's just bad news for you. Toxic.
Gotcha. And what are the signs of good chemistry, according to him?
He points to things like mutual intense gazing, really looking into each other's eyes, and a strong desire for physical touch, wanting to be close.
Where does he think it comes from?
He suggests it's usually a mix: physical attraction, yeah, but also shared interests, liking their personality, and just a good yin-yang feel, like you complement each other.
Can you tell for sure before,
Intimacy. He admits there are no 100% guarantees beforehand, but he highlights body language cues to watch for.
Like what?
Eye contact, again. The way a woman walks and moves. He shares this anecdote about his friend claiming you can tell how much a woman likes sex by her walk.
Okay. A bit subjective, maybe.
Very. Also, does she let you into her personal space? How does she cross her legs when sitting near you? Things like that.
He also mentions couples touching frequently.
Yeah, he observes that couples with good relationships tend to touch each other a lot. Little gestures, holding hands, etc.
He has a thing about voices, right?
He does. He calls himself a voice addict. He thinks a woman's voice is a really important body language cue. The tone, the cadence, reveals a lot about sensuality, in his opinion.
Interesting. And he circles back to the idea that turn-ons vary hugely.
Massively. Physical stuff, money, status, kinkiness. It's different for everyone. He even says women who seem quite prudish might still find kinkiness in a man appealing, even if they don't act on it.
So the takeaway is?
Develop your intuition, your sixth sense for reading body language, picking up on these subtle cues.
Okay, so after all this theory, he gets into his verbal seduction stories. These are his case studies, basically.
Pretty much. Anecdotes he uses to show his principles in action. The first one is called triple date.
What happens there?
He describes meeting a woman who puts up a hard front. He challenges her using his direct, sexually explicit style. He figures she was a 2 pretending to be a 4.
And the lesson.
Don't be intimidated. Many women test men. Some submissive women act dominant initially. Be direct about what you want, even if sex doesn't happen right away.
Okay. Story number 2, grocery store.
This one's about persistence. A woman rejects him initially, but then gives him really detailed criticisms of his approach.
And he sees that as a good sign.
Yes. He thinks only women who are secretly interested but pretending not to be, 2s acting like 4s, would bother giving detailed feedback. Outright rejection is usually brief.
So seduction is like sales, analyze the objection.
Kind of, yeah. His takeaway is that persistence can work if it's resistance, not total rejection. And again, the power of direct sexual talk.
Story 3, job interview. That sounds risky.
It does. He claims he used directness and teasing in a job interview. Cautiously, presumably, to gauge interest. He thought she was probably a 3.
Main point there.
Treat sex talk as normal, not taboo. Stay calm when discussing it. Be direct about intentions.
Story 4, bookstore celebrity.
A quick one. He approaches a woman directly in a bookstore. Turns out she's famous. Likely a 1 on his scale.
Takeaway?
Don't be intimidated by status. Treat everyone like a regular person. Directness works.
Story 5, phone sex to in-person. This sounds very Currie.
It does. He uses phone sex to build chemistry before meeting. The woman was a 3, pretending to be a 5, he says.
Key lessons?
Phone sex is powerful. Seemingly prudish women might have hidden desires. Be upfront about casual intentions, especially with older women on dating sites claiming they only want commitment. Don't let women bully you, as he puts it.
And the last one, wingman.
Here, he helps a friend facilitate a threesome using his verbal eroticism. One woman was a 1, the other a 2, pretending to be a 3.
What are the wingman takeaways?
Wingmen are valuable. Be honest when highlighting your friend's good points. Don't lie. Understand why women are out socially. Use direct sexual suggestions. Persistence pays off.
So these stories are all designed to reinforce his core messages.
Absolutely. It's crucial, though, to remember these are his interpretations of events. They're anecdotes chosen to support his model, not objective case studies.
Right. Good context. So as he wraps up the book, what are his final thoughts? Does he have a concluding message?
Yeah, he offers some clarifications. He says he's not necessarily pushing casual sex over long-term relationships. His main goal is honesty about desires, whatever they are.
Honesty and transparency.
Exactly. And he makes this interesting, maybe provocative comment that sex workers are often more real about sexuality than many people in mainstream society.
And he sees fear around discussing sex.
A lot of fear, especially in men. Fear of being judged, fear of saying the wrong thing.
He distinguishes between being private and being phony, too.
Yes. It's okay to be discreet, he suggests, but not okay to be duplicitous or lie about your intentions or feelings.
And he advocates for sex education.
Strongly. He thinks young people need good information.
And his final analogy about media violence.
Right, he draws a parallel. Just like seeing violence in movies doesn't automatically make someone violent, he argues that reading or discussing explicit sexual ideas doesn't automatically dictate someone's behavior. It's about exploring concepts.
Okay. So, wrapping up our deep dive into Alan Roger Currie's, say it again, we've definitely covered some ground.
We have.
Yeah.
From social programming, masking desires, to his 1 to 5 scale, the power he gives to direct, even explicit talk.
And those stories, which, yeah, they're his lens, but they do paint a vivid picture of his ideas in action.
Ultimately, he's making a case for, radical honesty. And understanding what's going on beneath the surface, consciously and subconsciously, when it comes to attraction.
So for you, the learner, what's the takeaway here? It's a provocative viewpoint, for sure.
Definitely. Whether you agree with everything Currie says or not, it forces you to think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About different perspectives, about motivations, about how powerful communication really is.
Yeah, and maybe that idea of categorizing responses, interest, resistance, rejection, and that detailed resistance possibly meaning underlying interest.
Yeah.
That could be useful beyond just dating, right? In any negotiation or social dynamic.
That's a really good point. Understanding different kinds of no or pushback could have broader applications. It's food for thought.
Absolutely. And Currie kind of leaves us with this big question, doesn't he? Why do we resist things we actually want?
That tension between social conditioning and raw desire he talks about.
So thinking about his framework and the stories and, say it again.
Yeah.
Maybe a final thought for you, the learner, is where in your own life might you see that conflict playing out?
Yeah, between what you feel you should want or do and what you maybe actually desire.
And could understanding those motivations, yours and others, more directly lead to, I don't know, more authentic connections?
It's a fascinating question to ponder. Definitely not the end of the conversation.
Not at all. Lots to think about. Thanks for exploring this one with me.
My pleasure. It was certainly interesting.